Alabama, Kentucky, Ohio, Mississippi, Georgia, Utah, Arkansas. In state after state, the most restrictive abortion legislation in decades is being passed and signed into law with extraordinary speed. New regulations advanced in Missouri and Louisiana legislatures in just the last 24 hours. Any one of these abortion laws would be among the most restrictive we have seen since Roe v. Wade was decided 46 years ago. Democratic presidential candidates, no surprise, have led the charge in criticizing the laws, particularly the restrictions in Alabama. The question, will reproductive rights end up being a core issue that could lead one of them to the White House? I want to bring in Eli Stokols, White House reporter with the LA Times, Elise Jordan, an aide to the George W. Bush White House, and her first time here, Sharon Weston Brown, the mayor of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Mayor, to you first. Louisiana, your state, is moving towards passing its own heartbeat bill that would limit abortion at 6 weeks. Take us locally. How do your constituents feel about this legislation?
I'm glad you said that, to take you locally, because certainly it is a state issue, and Louisiana already has a path and a history around that issue. But as a mayor of a city, a growing and thriving city, I will tell you that my constituents would prefer that we look at things more holistically. For example, what is happening with families in poverty? What do we do about parents who are trying to put their children on a trajectory of success? That's why, as a mayor, I've looked at programs and implemented programs such as our Cradle to K, which is empowering parents who sometimes don't know what to do when they have a baby and how they put that child on a trajectory of success. We all know that early childhood development is essential for families to have success in life. And so from a holistic point of view, I think we should broaden the discussion.
But is abortion legislation a priority?
I would say from a statewide perspective that in the Louisiana legislature, it has become a priority. But when I talk to my folks on the local level as a mayor, they're concerned about closing the income gap, being able to earn a living so that they can pay their bills and maintain their dignity. And as a mayor, that's what we're trying to do. We're moving to close those gaps, to bring more equity and inclusion, to open up opportunities for entrepreneurs and for families. I want to see the families in my city thrive and prosper on every level.
People aren't political. They are just looking to get by and hopefully thrive. Elise, a stunning reaction from TV evangelist and anti-abortion advocate, some could say godfather, Pat Robertson, about the law and how it would challenge Roe v. Wade. I know you've seen it on cable news in the last 12 hours. I must show it to you again.
I think Alabama has gone too far. They've passed a law that would give a 99-year prison sentence to people who could commit abortion. There's no exception for rape or incest. It's an extreme law, and they want to challenge Roe versus Wade. But my humble view is that this is not the case we want to bring to the Supreme Court, because I think this one will lose.
Is he right?
You've got to hand it to the Alabama GOP. You know you've jumped the shark when Pat Robertson is calling you out. And you look at their track record after the last couple of years, and I'm sorry, Roy Moore, backing Roy Moore, losing a Senate seat in Alabama to the Democrats. And then this is more of a culture war that, you know, maybe it resonates at a state level, maybe at a national level. But in terms of pragmatic changes in the day-to-day life of men and women like your constituents, it isn't exactly a galvanizing issue. And I think it's a great 2020 issue, frankly, for Democrats if Republicans overstep.
All right, Eli, if it's a great issue 2020 for Democrats, where does the president come down on this? Is it something he wants to talk about? His evangelical base to this point has been bulletproof. He's got 2 Supreme Courts and a record number of federal judges on the bench, and they like it.
Yeah, I think that Pat Robertson quote's really interesting, because that's, maybe an indication that the president's going to take his time before responding and talking about this specific legislation and trying to figure out which way the wind is blowing politically here. On the whole, he has looked at abortion as a way to really hammer home his bona fides with those social conservatives. The president himself being married 3 times. He has had to really prove those credentials to those voters, and he's done so. He's never shied away from culture war type of issues. He's the first president to speak at the March for Life. This is a guy who's really tried to use this issue to drive a wedge and to identify himself as one with the social conservative movement, but he's also a survivalist. He will, hem and haw on some of these issues, and I could see a case where, he could go either way on this. He could turn this into a big fight and say that Republicans need to stay strong and fight to stop abortion and to curtail abortion rights, or he could potentially look at this and shy away from taking such a stance because this specific legislation could backfire on him and on Republicans.
Driving a wedge is the president's forte. Jared Kushner wants this immigration plan that's going to be rolled out today to be what unites Republicans and maybe even Democrats. You think it has a chance?
Has about as much of a chance as Jared Kushner's Middle East peace plan, I think. It's dead on arrival. You have Republican lawmakers making fun of this bill privately and talking about how Jared Kushner, is just wasting his time. Yet again, on another pointless mission. The president's own team is divided as to what they want in immigration. If you've got Stephen Miller fighting internally and not wanting any kind of reform and to continue down a more draconian path, they have to solve their differences amongst themselves before they try to go to Congress with a plan.
Mayor, what's your thought? You said you've got constituents trying to close the pay gap, live their best lives. What's their take on immigration where the president is saying, we're full, we've got no space, I want to put my own people to work?
Well, listen, Louisiana has a history of being an international state, and Baton Rouge an international community. I mean, look at the fabric of Louisiana, our culture, the French, the Africans, the Cajun, the Creole. That's part of who we are. And in Baton Rouge, we're a welcoming city. I mean, we have people from all over who are part of our research sector, who are part of uplifting our community in every sphere of influence. And so we understand the strength of diversity in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Well, we'll see. The president is rolling that plan out later today. No doubt there's going to be big response. Eli, you think any chance it passes? I mean, this is just the first swing. We don't know what the final draft will look like.
Well, the fact that they haven't reached out to Democrats at all and tried to gauge their support or put any sweeteners in for them related to Dreamers or DACA or anything else,
but they
just
still
tells
might.
you. Well, it just tells you that this is really a messaging exercise for Republicans. They're trying to get everybody on their side on the same page here, and really trying to maybe, if people pay attention to the details here, to reframe the debate a little bit and to say, look, the president's not trying to limit immigration, just wants different kinds of folks coming in. He wants to be merit-based rather than based on family ties. But that's probably a thing that's going to get lost here, especially because the specific plan has no hopes of going anywhere until they start working with Democrats.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.